show, and I know what I've done. I've gone and left up the morning sports briefing banner already. Wow, what a start to the show. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for rugby predictions and opinions. And yes, we are going back in time. We're going back all the way to 2006 and the Heineken Cup. Not this new fangled thing, but the real original Heineken Cup. We're going to go back to round 6, and we're going to go and watch Munster versus Sale. And you're like, Paul, Munster versus Sale? But Sale are one of these sort of middle to lower bouncing around Premiership teams. They might be nowadays, but back then they came into this game undefeated, having lost only 4 games all season, 2 of those in the Anglo-Welsh Cup, which, let's be honest, doesn't really count. So they came into this game with having lost only 2 games all season. They were a powerhouse in English rugby back then. And to go through all of the action with me, I've got Dan O'Brien. How are you doing, sir?
After night here, morning over there.
And so clearly you've got your Munster top on. You're a Munster fan. Were you at the game that day?
No, it wasn't. But it was funny. Actually, looking at the rerun of this game, it brought back very vivid memories of actually watching the game from home. So, yeah, just even trying to get tickets to those kind of games back then, whatever about now, back then it was like hen's teeth. It was so difficult to get them. Even the funny story I heard, it happened to my brother. He got tickets. It was 2 or 3 years before that when Munster played Stadium in the quarterfinals, and the house he was living at, he ended up getting a random post came to the house. It had his name on it, but there weren't his tickets. But he just went
anyway.
I'll use them. So yeah, no, tickets back then were insanely difficult to get. So I was there in person, but yeah, this game, just watching it, the flashbacks were great.
Yeah, and you're mentioning there about how Munster who played Stad was the semi-finals, but they were a side that would make it through to the quarterfinals pretty much every single year and come up short. And having been losing to Northampton Saints in the final was about as good as it got back then. We now think of them as being one of the kind of marquee European names, along with Leinster and Toulouse and perhaps Leicester back in the day. But at this stage, whilst they generally made the quarterfinals, they didn't normally manage to go on and win the thing.
Yeah, it was normally they made 2 finals, lost both of them to English sides, and they would have made a couple of semi-finals. Like even the year before, they ended up they lost to Biarritz in the quarterfinals, and people were kind of wondering, okay, is this the end of the road for this side? Because they the Biarritz game, they were overpowered, and that tended to happen to them. Like they lost to Wasps the previous time in the semi-finals, and one of the best games ever as well. So there was a bit of time there where Munster, they were getting so far, and then they were just kind of falling. Kind of like what they're doing now at the moment, actually.
Well, yes, and one of the things that is described early in this game is the Munster Pack's described as being committed old warriors, which, as you say, was that their real chance the previous season? Were they past it come this season? And they'd lost to Sale Sharks 27-13 up in Manchester when Paul O'Connell had actually missed that game. So yeah, for those people who are thinking, well, look, this is a foregone conclusion. Munster never lose at home, and to be true, they didn't at this stage. They'd never lost at home at Thurmond Park in Europe, but they'd lost to Sale away 27-13. Sale were on an amazing run of form that season. We're talking about when we get to the lineups, you'll recognise a lot of the names in that side. But I must admit, I was looking at. Looking at this, and the referee was Joel Jute of France, who I, to be honest, hadn't heard of before, but apparently he had also reffed a big game that Munster had against Gloucester a couple of years before that finished 35-14. So they were used to this referee, brought back good memories of them, and it's kind of funny listening to the commentary. It's Stuart Barnes and Miles Davis. How times don't change.
Yep. It's just they've been there nearly the whole time through it, so they're always, and like even a lot of the big moments Munster have had, like they've been the commentators for those as well. So
yeah, yeah. Some things change, some things don't change. So let's look at that Munster side then. Horan Flannery, Hayes in the front row, O'Callaghan and O'Connell in the engine room. Boy, was that's a combo that I think we all remember. Leamy, Wallace and Foley as the Lucies, and a couple of players here you go, oh yeah, these guys went on to be really good. But you got to remember that Flannery and Leamy in particular were really young guns at this stage. We had a Stringer and O'Gara as the halfback combination. In the and I must say, when it comes to the backs, the names aren't ones that kind of ring bells much. But Holstead and Murphy are the centre combination, with Dowling, Kelly and Payne as the back three. And that's not Jared Payne either, for those people who are thinking of recognising that name. So, a set of backs, as soon as you got outside of O'Gara, really, that sort of, I guess, good provincial men, but not international quality.
Oh no, I mean, like, even at the time, like, a lot of them would, even say with Barry Murphy and even Ian Dowling, like, it would have been the kind of their first real serious seasons, even just getting into the team. Like, Payne would have been around for a few years, but it's interesting, even mentioning there, like, Barry Murphy is in particular. Like, I remember the previous round, they went to Castres in France, and generally when you go there, it's just like, oh god, this is going to be really tough, and they ended up winning 46-9. And that was kind of the first inkling I kind of had of, okay, this team's a little different, and a lot of it had to do around like Barry Murphy. Like, he ended up not doing too much after this, but a big reason behind it, he had awful luck in terms of injuries. Similar with Ian Dowling, they both retired around the same year. Dowling had terrible hip issues. Like, only a couple of weeks even after this game, Barry Murphy, he broke his leg and dislocated his ankle. So like that was So like he never really did come. He was never the same player when he kind of came back after that. But when you mentioned there, like, their backs that wouldn't have been household names, but even just looking back on this game, they really were. Prior Munster teams, like you mentioned the pack there, like that was basically nearly that was the, like, within a year or two, that was nearly the Irish pack going into the Grand Slam as well. It was a teak tough, like, this was the experience, they had that edge to it. But in prior Heineken campaigns, Munster didn't really have a backline. It was kind of, if you stopped the front eight for Munster, that was it. This backline, it started to change things up from that perspective, and Barry Murphy in particular played a really important, like, he ended up getting man of the match in this game, but he played a really important part. And like, even Halstead inside him was the perfect foil. Dowling as well, like, it's nuts. He was he would have been in around the Munster team for 4 or 5 years, but he's got 2 Heineken Cup medals. I mean, he couldn't have timed it any better as well. Of course, they had Stringer and O'Gara there as well, like the experience that they brought to it. But like, even in this game, that backline, it really did, like, 3 of the 4 tries that Munster ended up getting, they were on the back of what those players did, be it either scoring or even setting them up as well. So they weren't very household names, but my God, they played a really important part in kind of finally getting Munster to win the tournament.
Yeah, and when we get on to the game, that really did spring to mind, was how much this Munster side didn't play like I was expecting them to going in to watch it. Off the bench, Fogarty, Pucilello, is that right? No, I've got to spell that one.
Pucilello.
There we go. Thank you. Driscoll, Kearney, O'Leary, Laurie, Connolly. Again, not household names coming off the bench there, because that's not Brian O'Driscoll. That's O'Driscoll, the second rower who went on to play for Exeter Chiefs. His brother. So it's not the same. Not the same player there. So again, a whole bunch of not well known names. When we get to the sell side, you'll see why I'm saying that. Looking at the sell side, then, so Sheridan, Bruno, Stewart across the front row, Fernandez, Lobbe, and Jones in the engine room. Yes, we have. This is not just a purely English side by any stretch of the imagination. White, Magnus Lund, and Sebastian Chabel in the Lucies. So we're looking at quite a few international players there. Not all, and Fernandez, Lobbe, and Chabel, I mean, kind of players who we've been talking about world 15s in this time, perhaps. Martinez and Hodgson in the halfback pairing. Savili and Taylor were the centres. Jason, Robinson, Cueto, and Landaro. I mean, must admit the fullback was someone that I didn't recognise, but yeah, I mean, players like Jason Robinson in there, and then when we look at the bench with Titterall, Coots, Schofield, Day, Wigglesworth, Mayer, and Tyone. This was the age when players like Schofield and Jason Robinson were coming across from rugby league in quite their numbers from in the English game. So yeah, I'd forgotten that players like Schofield came across and had a go at this. We kind of talk about. We also had Vinicola came over. We had I've gone blank now. The England fly half's dad.
Farrell. Andy Farrell.
Andy Farrell came over. So the whole bunch of these guys who were legends in the league game coming over and playing in rugby union. So yeah, it was definitely interesting times when this was all going on. But yeah, I mean, when you've got players like Titterall, English international, coming off the bench for Sale, the bench. Wigglesworth, who's gone on to win a lot of things. Dominic Day. That bench looks an awful lot stronger than the Munster bench when you're looking at household names.
Oh no, exactly. Like they definitely had it in terms of depth, and like you mentioned, like Sale came over. They were a heavyweight outfit. Like they were top. They were top of the English league, and like it was the year that they went on to pretty much stuff Leicester as well in the final, and like that Philippe Saint-André as coach as well. Like it was an English team, but with a nice smattering of just kind of French players and that kind of style of play to it as well. And like when they won even the English league, that they were going, right, this is just the start of they were looking at, this is going to be our year, this is going to be our time, when actually it was probably their only really good professional season. And like it was the only time they could really compete with other sides. And like this game in particular was like, they didn't go into this game going, oh, we might get something out of it. They were going into this game going like, they had even with Jason White, they had the Scotland captain there. You had Jason Robinson, World Cup winner and captain for them as well. Like Charlie Hodgson at this stage, him and Wigglesworth went on to do very good things with Saracens, but Hodgson was a serious operator in of itself. And you look through that pack, even like Chabal, Fernandez Lobe, like Sheridan, he was a monster of a prop to have as well, just kind of the impact. And even watching the game, you'd notice like when they did start to get momentum, they could build it very quickly, and they were a top side. Like it just, like the fact that they very convincingly bet Leicester as well that season to win to win, I think it was the Guinness Premiership then, but they won that against, if you were beating Leicester in the final, that's a very good sign for your team. So this wasn't a lightweight side that was coming over to Thomond Park.
No. Coming into this also, Sale Sharks had won all 5 of their pool games. They topped the group. Munster, I say, had lost that one game to Sale. So Munster knew that to top the group, not only did they have to win this game, but they also had to get a bonus point as well, and stop Sale from getting a losing bonus point. So the Munster were up against it to top this pool. Lots of talk during the week with them, because whoever lost this game had a very good chance of going over to Toulouse. Having a quarter-final in Toulouse. Now, Toulouse have won the Heineken Cup, I think it was 5 times. So, look, there's a side that you did not want to travel to as a quarter-final, because it basically meant your Heineken Cup was going to be over. Winning this game wasn't necessarily going to be enough for Munster.
No, it wasn't. It was similar to kind of the miracle match. Like they needed the full 5. They needed to get that. They needed to stop Sale from getting anything. And like the permutations of it, they could have been Toulouse away, or potentially even Biarritz. And like even the kind of the prize that Sale got for losing was having to go to Biarritz, but even it was to go to them in San Sebastian as well, which they duly lost. When you think of it, even like the small little things like that, the tries that Munster got in the end, that had a huge part in helping them get to win the tournament. Because interestingly, when you mentioned having to go away to Toulouse, and like kind of going, for most teams that was a death sentence, it ended up Leinster going there and they ended up beating Toulouse. And even it was with that Toulouse game when Leinster won, that was the kind of time I realised, wow, we actually have a chance of winning this, because that Toulouse team back then was like the dream team at that stage. They were so star-studded, but Leinster went and did a number on them in one of the most insane games of rugby you're ever going to see. Now,
so we kick off this game. Sale get the kick-off, and We get a scrum outside the 22. There's a knock on. Good Munster counter attack. Blah blah blah. And 2 minutes in, we have a scrap. I mean, this is straight away. This was going to be a feisty affair. So yeah, both teams were revved up massively for this. And Fernando Lobe comes in, throws a punch, and only gets a yellow card. I mean, this was a punch to the head, and he gets a yellow card. And we're going to see that throughout this, is that we have multiple scraps. Multiple times you're thinking, geez, we would be seeing... You'd never have 15 on 15 in a modern game the way this game went.
Oh no, it was nuts. I mean, not only was that, like, it was just the amount of fights that there were. It was like, kind of looking back on it, because I hadn't watched it in years. But like you mentioned, yeah, the fight nearly right at the very start. That there was in Lobby coming in, like even Flannery was lucky he didn't get a sin bin either, because he punched him back. And like even the thing that really stood out for me in that fight in particular was it Stringer at one stage, like he was fighting with he was toe to toe with Sheridan in a fight. You're going Peter Stringer, one of the smallest international players, versus Andrew Sheridan, one of the most feared like props as well. Like it was just insane. And like even with like the audio as well that I could get from, my God, the crowd, there might have been only 13,000 there. But I remember at the time O'Gara saying that it was the best at the time. It was the best atmosphere he had ever been in, and like that was just with 13,000 in the stadium. It was nuts. Even just checking the fight there, it's hilarious. Like if that had happened now, there'd be yellow cards all over the place.
And a couple of reds. Even though it's only 2 minutes in, and you say it's only 13,000, but there wasn't a spare seat in the house, folks. It was full. This isn't like a 40,000 seat stadium that was slightly empty. No, this was a packed house. They couldn't get anyone else in there. Multiple ones of those. And then we have our first penalty of the game. Now, something that you've talked to me before is that, or you've tweeted to me before, is that people in the pub will tell you off for talking when a player is taking a penalty, and I just laugh at that. But then you watch this game, and I mean, I've watched a lot of games of rugby, obviously from Europe, and the crowd goes quiet. No, in this one the crowd goes silent. I mean, deathly silent. There is not. I mean, people aren't even moving. They're just to make sure they don't make a noise. It was, very, very quiet.
And even as kind of... Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, it's kind of even like it was silent, but you could kind of it's the silence that you get when there's 13,000 people. Kind of there's that like you're definitely not on your own with it. And like even when you mentioned about it was a full house, and kind of it had a couple of the perfect ingredients. It was round 6 of the Heineken Cup. It was in Thomond. It was a Saturday evening. There was a real mist over the stadium, and Munster had to win and get the full points. Like it had absolutely everything that, say, the Gloucester, the Miracle match before, kind of had the same thing. And like nearly any other time since, a lot of the great games they've had that formula going into it. Say even like the Northampton game was a Saturday evening kickoff, like, and even ironically the one that they did finally lose against Leicester had very much the same ingredients, and it was a landmark game, but for totally different reasons for Munster.
And what really got me about this with this silence was that the commentators were whispering. Even the commentators were trying to go quiet, which was kind of like, whoa, okay. This is the commentators were basically getting scared of being told off by people around them during the commentary, which I found kind of humorous. O'Gara, unsurprisingly, kicks it over for a 3-0 lead. Then Sale get themselves in a good position, and they've got a penalty 5 metres out. Penalty, and they kick to the corner to go 5 metres out, and you're like, oh, okay. Now, nowadays, we see that a lot, is teams kicking to the corner and trying to push it. Back in those days, you didn't. You built your lead, and if you felt you had the upper hand and you kind of got the momentum, you might do it after you've got yourself a more than a score lead. But they went for it straight from the off. Yeah, they were very confident. Sale were very confident coming into this game. Good defence by Munster meant they didn't get there, and in the end, it was a drop goal attempt, but it was nowhere near.
It was a terrible, and even like it nearly kind of summarized both teams as well on the day. Like when Munster got into kind of those positions, they got something out of it. They were cool, like they got tries. Whether it's kind of with Sale, like even you could see Larchella, his kick, it was terrible, and he fluffed it as well. Like they tended to kind of panic. Whereas Munster were a bit like it was cool heads at the time, and even in terms of like the aggression that both sides might have shown, it was Munster's aggression was a lot. They didn't do like they didn't do stupid hits off the ball, or they did it at the bottom of a ruck so nobody would see it. Whether a Sale, like kind of, they even like there was some late hits that went in on players. I think even with O'Gara at one stage got flattened by Jason White. They just weren't smart with the hits that they did, and it was another key reason as well why there were so many bloody fights, because you could see Sale, like physically they were dominating a lot of teams that year, and they thought, right, we'll try and do the same thing to Munster, and kind of the first half showed that it did not work for him.
No, it didn't, and so we had that. We had Ronan O'Gara taking a quick quick dropout, short to himself, and playing actually more, playing a kind of doing kind of running style fly half, which is perhaps not what we think of him being. We think of him being that kind of the general rather than the creative fly half. But in this game, he really was a creative player. Again, 9 minutes in, we stop the clock again. The referee and the touch judge have another chat because we've had another fight.
Yep.
And this time, I'm like, okay, here we go, another yellow card. Nope. They decide that actually, and I think what you saw was if you got the touch judge on the far side, the older of the two, there was more chance of a card than if you got the touch judge on the near side. I think he was more lenient. So if you were going to be messing around in rucks and you were going to be getting involved in any kind of physical stuff, make sure that you could be seen from the near side touchline rather than the far side touchline, because whilst we only saw one yellow card in this one, the far touchline judge tried I think at least twice more to get players carded. But the referee said no. So yeah, definitely some tactics there. Absolute silence again. Hodgson evens things up because yes, I say a Leinster player should have gone at that point, I think. Now this is the moment of the match for you. I think is the restart here, where Ronan O'Gara kicks it. Sebastian Chabal collects. He gets wrapped up by Paul O'Connell. Kept on his feet,
and O'Callaghan, and nearly then the rest of the Munster pack. At one stage I counted like it was O'Connell and O'Callaghan who were leading the charge, but by the end of it about 5 of the pack were in it, and like Chabal caught it on the outside his 22, and by the time he was on the ground he was on his own 5. Yep.
And then Sale managed to somehow keep hold of the ball, but a sliced clearance means there's suddenly a 7 metre line out for Munster, and from that, Foley. We have a line-out maul, and Foley scores, and suddenly, it's 10-3. Munster keeping the crowd on side. Sale haven't managed to silence them which is exactly what they were trying to do with that line-out maul. Sale went there, got repelled. Munster come down, they score, and as you say, that execution was there about this side. And you got to remember, you got line-out operators like O'Connell, and he had a majestic day at the line-out.
Oh, and like the line-out as a whole, like Sales, they did. Not only were they really solid in their own line-out, but they absolutely dismantled Sales as well, and like they had some pretty decent operators. Even on their side. But the one thing that kind of, you mentioned about Flannery earlier, like this would have been when he was kind of maybe, it was near the start of his career or getting into the starting 15 for Munster. But the one thing that Flannery always had going for him was kind of his throw-ins were they were darts. It was so, like generally you would have had, say, if there was line-out throws before hookers, when they throw it was kind of looped in to the line-out, but with Flannery's, like they were like, it was like a quarterback throw, the way he would spiral the ball into the line-outs, and it made it for such a powerful weapon. And of course this was before I remember it was like 2 years later the ELVs were brought in, where one of the laws could be you could collapse them all. This was before that, which meant that teams didn't even try and risk collapsing it, and Munster in this game especially, like they made max use of that maul. And yeah, even when you mentioned that first try, that set the physical marker, because even I remember the semi-final then Munster did something very similar to Leinster. They just physically they mauled them out of the game again at the start, and it was, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And kind of with this year, Munster had that pack like I said, international pack. But as the game goes on, you're going to kind of see how the backs, how they came into it as well, and how it was in the end one of the big differences that resulted in Munster getting over the line and winning the Heineken Cup this year.
Yeah, and I'm conscious actually we're 25 minutes in and we're only about 10 minutes into the game, 30 minutes. But,
oh God!
But yeah, the only time actually that we saw Flannery have a bad line out was when Stuart Barnes was basically saying what you were saying, that he's a great line operator. Soon after this, we had and again, showing you kind of what Chabelle decided that he was going to boss this game. To the extent that he even had a chip and collect, and he collected it on the run. I mean, yeah, playing with a lot of confidence, even when he's just been driven back 20 metres from the previous kickoff. This was an exciting team in the backs from Sale. They had a licence to play. That then ended up with with the penalty kick for Hodgson, and we're 10-6. With Lobby coming back off from the sin bin, and you're thinking actually Sale have come out of this pretty well, considering they've been a player down. Why they went for the corner with a player down is anybody's guess, but there you go. But they've come out the sin binning only 4 points behind. They're still well in this game, and they're back up to 15 players. They then go on to have a really big attack, powering away at the Munster line. You're thinking, actually, hey, Sailor in with a really good shout here, but they start taking poor options. And this is kind of going back to what you were saying there about rushed options. People making the wrong, perhaps playing too much as individuals, panicking at times, and you're thinking, look, you've got the pressure, you're in the right part of the pitch. Why are you taking that decision? Be it a poor drop goal, be it a grubber through when keeping it in hand was clearly the better option. They were just bad decision making was really hurting Sale in this opening section. It also didn't help. They lost Savili, their number 12, off to injury, and Tyone comes on, who is described as a forward and a back in the match preview.
It's even nuts the way that it worked out. You see teams now doing a 6-2 split on the bench, where there's like with Tyone, and even in the game, like he plays both forward and back, so he's the definition of the player that you see. It could be a 6-2 or a 5-3 depending on where you need him on the field. Yep.
Except back in those days, there was only one prop replacement. Remember, we're not talking. This was a 22-man squad, not a 23-man squad. So the way it was described was, I think it was like a 4-2 plus 1 kind of thing. was how they described it. So that was it. But they were. That meant they definitely lost that distributor at number 12. Tony, a big, powerful carrier, but not the distributor really there. But it also meant defensively, you've suddenly got yourself a guy in there who's not really used to defending at 12. And I think we probably saw that is what happened just before the half-hour mark. There's a Munster line out, quick hands by the backs, a couple of guys just running straight, fixing defenders. There's an overlap, and we see the winger going in the corner. And this is exactly what we were saying earlier, that you were mentioning earlier, is that, look, Munster previously had the forwards, but they would keep it in. But here, in a situation just outside of 22, you're expecting probably actually a line out more from Munster, because that's how they kind of generally played. But no, they released the backs, and a real nice move to put the winger over on a first phase attack. And it's like not what a lot of people would say as being the Munster style of play.
Yeah, I know. Even like if you check the try itself, the player mentioned Barry Murphy before. He does a little dummy during the play, and it fixes Taylor, but it also fixes it fixed Taylor in his position. It stuck one or two of the Sale's defenders, and you can kind of see at the end it creates just enough space kind of for Dowling to get in the corner. Well, that's what I said. Like Murphy, he brought these one or two really small things or important things to the game. And like there's a reason he got man of the match in this match as well. But like he just that small little dummy for that little phase, it gave them that 1 or 2 seconds that at the highest level is the difference between a try and between no try and a try. Yeah,
absolutely. One of the notes I've got down here after that was Munster's exits were just much cleaner, and they were exiting really well. We had another scrap again, another stop for ref chat. This time it was the It was the lineman from the other side. And sorry, I was wrong earlier. I said there was only one yellow card. There weren't. There was two. There was a yellow card here for the Munster prop, I think it was. But for me, I would have seen. Oh, was it two yellow cards in this one? Because was it red one and white?
Yeah, it was
five?
Jones and
right.
Yeah, Jones and Horan both got some card. It was funny. The ref went during the game during that stage. He went, some of the players are a bit overexcited, and you're like, we've had 3 fights so far. I think overexcited is a bit of an understatement.
Yes, 3 fights that should have had multiple cards. This is the first one that did. And so we lost a prop and a prop for Munster and a lock for Sale. For the rest of the half, not the rest of the half. Sorry, for 10 minutes. We're around that half-hour mark there, just after it. And this is kind of where, so we're 17-6 at this point. But Sale have really been in it, and you're thinking, okay, they've butchered a couple of try-scoring opportunities. This could easily have been about a 17-all-ish kind of game. That's how the play kind of looks. But this is where it all kind of flips on its head in the last in this sort of the last 15 minutes of the half. We have a deflected kick that this is one of those days where you kind of go, okay, yes, it's our day, because there's a chip over to try and find space. The Sale player gets his hands up, deflects it. Murphy's in the right place, collects it. Some really lovely swerving running, good dummy. As players cover the player that's going to get passed to, and he runs it all the way in himself, and suddenly it's 24-6, and you're like, okay, this suddenly isn't actually a game anymore. This is looking like a commanding lead.
Yeah, and even that, like, it was from Murphy scored the try. I have it. It's the most opportune try there's ever been in Thomond Park. Just kind of not only with the deflection and kind of originally going, oh, he's got the ball, but then he keeps running, and suddenly when he's at the 22, you realise, oh my God, he could actually score this. And like, that's Jason Robinson who was trying to chase him down as well. And like, Robinson couldn't even catch him. Like Murphy, he was inspired that night. But I'd nearly compared to kind of the immaculate reception in the in the Super Bowl. Kind of, if you're looking at just opportune deflections like that one, the odds of it would be it's a 1 in a million chance of it happening, but it did happen there. And like you said, that couple of minutes really did swing the game. Sale were ended up to this point, and then all of a sudden they were. It was even like Jason White at one stage. It was said he was looking into the crowd and just in shock, kind of like, what the hell's going on? And one of the crowd just shouted back at him like, "What are you looking at?" It was that kind of an intimidating atmosphere.
And suddenly we've gone from a game, that really is, I say, just a couple of mistakes, and then that then makes it that 24-6. We'll make a lot of Murphy in this one, but I think we should also point out that, look, this was a team effort by Munster. That the reason he got to run that was because he had guys that were up with him on supporting lines, distracting defenders, and there's a lot of work going on off the ball by the Munster players. They're not. When we get into the second half, one of the things that I picked up was a lot of the Sale Sharks players were perhaps doing similar things, but because they were trying to do it on their own, they were easier to shut down. Whereas in this, you've got Munster players trying it, but they've got options, so that actually the other options are pulling the defence to make it easier for them or make it possible for them to make these really good runs. And so, the other backs need a lot of credit for for that try as well. Hodgson then, and this game seemed to go on forever.
It was before the time that they would stop, and I was looking at it going, we're nearly on 50 minutes here, and it's still the first half. What's going on?
I actually rewound to try and figure out whether I'd missed half time, because I'm looking at the clock. They didn't stop the clock here. The clock on the TV just kept going. The referee just kept track of how much extra time there was, kind of a bit sort of football like. And in all honesty, we had multiple stoppages for fighting, so it's no surprise that we had that there was this extra time. But nowadays, because they stop the clock, you know where you are, how much time is left. This one, you had no clue as to how much longer there was. So on 43 minutes, Hodgson misses a kick, and I'm thinking, it's injury time. And there was a high tackle involved there that was totally ignored. That would be a red card nowadays. Actually, the other point we should make in here is actually there's no box kicking. There's not one box kick all game. So if you
I noticed even you mentioned it there. Like, I mean, Wigglesworth, he comes on and he does a couple. He does take kicks, but yeah, like you said, they're not like the box kicks that you see today. And even like there wasn't very many scrums either in the first half. I think I only counted like 3 or 4 altogether, and it wasn't continuous stop start reset them like they were. I was just going, why did we change the laws again? Because these scrums just seem to kind of go by a lot quicker than the ones today do.
And also the other thing here is that this Munster side again. Was a counter-attacking side. Both we saw tap and goes inside their own half for penalties. They did it more in the second half than the first half, and I'll talk about the strange tactics. But they were definitely trying to. Both sides were trying to run the other side off the park here, fitness-wise, which was I would have said a dubious choice by Munster, considering the strengths of the benches. But a lot of players in those days did play the full 80. And the benches weren't used to the same extent, so it was a different style of game in there. Hodgson did get got another attempt on 45 minutes with hands in the ruck for a penalty, making it 24-9. And I'm thinking 45 minutes, surely we're over. No, we keep on going.
It just kept going.
On 49 minutes, O'Gara gets tries a penalty from halfway, but it just comes up short, and then that's pretty much half time. But again, Tyone has a swinging arm in the tackle and pretty much takes someone's head off. But hey, no, that's wrapping an arm apparently, and and it's just a penalty. We should have lost at least 3 or 4 red cards in that first half by today's standards. But 24-9 at half time. Things looking very much Munster's way, and you're thinking, okay, we've had quite a lot of scoring. We're going to have an exciting second half as well. But that didn't happen.
No, it was nuts. Even like at halftime, I remember kind of when I paused the video and I just went, I just remembered how insane a first half of rugby that was. Kind of, if you were to mention a game that had everything in the first half, it basically did. Sale were getting hammered back and back. Munster they made the most of their chances, and as halves of rugby go, it's comparable to anything today. Like, it was absolutely nuts. Actually, looking back on it, how wild a half it was, and then the second half kind of made up for it.
Absolutely. Second half. We come into the second half, factors and basically errors from from Sale really started to hurt them. The kicks were going too long. The kicks were going out in the full. Things like that. They were kicking the ball to Munster, and especially in that first kind of 15 minutes, Munster really decided, we're just going to hold on to the ball and run it back at you, because we've had a pretty good time at the ruck. We haven't turned it over that often. You're not bullying us in the forwards, so we're going to keep hold of the ball and just starve you of the ball. And whenever a Munster player was running, there were always a couple of players running off each shoulder, so you always had options to pass. They could keep the ball alive pretty well. Not in the offloading style we have today, but in the kind of standing up in the tackle and making a pass. They did that really well. And having all those extra players around it meant that they could keep hold of the ball, starve Sale of the ball, and that meant that when they had it, they had wonderful individuals like Tyone, who could break tackles, like Chabelle, like Sheridan, as you say, as a running prop, like Robinson and Cueto. I mean, Cueto had a shocker of a game in this one.
Oh, he had a nightmare. When looking back at it, I just went, I don't think he got anything right. It was just like whether it was dropping the ball or when he kicked, his kicks were terrible as well. They were just right down the middle. And when you mentioned Chabal, he must come out in cold sweats whenever he thinks of Thomond Park, because every time he got the ball, like at one stage he got driven back by O'Gara. Like, if you're getting driven back by Ronan O'Gara in a tackle, then and if you're number 8, it's not going to be your night.
No, it's not. I'd forgotten how clean cut and shaven he was. He didn't look like the caveman for me. So yes, this was pre-caveman days. He still had a serious beard, more than my one. Oh, and by the way, folks, the reason that I'm all Shaggy like this is #ISO beard. So I'm growing a beard whilst in isolation. I'll shave it off afterwards, but it's to raise awareness for supporting your local small and medium businesses. So please do shop local, support those businesses. They're having a tough time of it at the moment. Clearly he went to the hairdresser on a regular basis because he was. It was all kind of neat and tidy, whereas there's plenty of length there, but not his shaggy caveman days. But all those players, remember, you might not rate Cueto in, but he's the all-time Premiership leading try scorer, or wasn't until recently. He was a try scoring machine at club level. So 5 or 6 game breakers there, all trying to do their thing. None of them actually managing to pull it off. We saw that over and over again. And from what had been basically an attacking game for Munster, at around about that hour markish, was probably where they kind of where Sale really actually managed to get hold of the ball and camp in Munster territory, or get a good amount of territory and possession. And the last 25 minutes was pretty much a massive defensive effort by Munster. I felt,
and even kind of even like you mentioned there, say Munster were one of the really interesting things, say for the first 20 or so, like O'Gara's kicking into the corner, like that was always a big strength of his, and they were doing that. They were trying to put pressure on. Then Sale kind of flipped it, and you could see for the last 15 or so minutes, Sale were just doing a plan of, we're going to kick the ball as far away from our line as possible, and you're going to have to try and attack back with it. It was great even to see the kind of the kicks O'Gara did into the corner. I mean, my God, they were terrific. Granted, Hodgson did an absolute beaut of a kick as well at one stage. And the one thing that this game, when you mentioned there about the box kicks, the one thing that this game also reminded me of, when was the last time you saw so many spiral kicks? I noticed it with O'Gara in particular, like he was sending a lot of spirals into touch as well, and like that's something that only happened in the last Six Nations once or twice. But like you don't see anybody really spiral the ball anymore, and you're wondering why the hell don't they? Because it was such a powerful weapon to use.
Yeah, it was. But then again, there was another one where he tried to spiral it, but he gets it wrong, and it doesn't go anywhere near where he expects it to go. I think he gets the inside of the boot rather than the outside of the boot, and it just so when you get it wrong, it goes very, very wrong, which I think is why they've stopped doing it. But the other thing you don't see in this game is many contested kicks. Right, I mean there's 2 or 3, but in the modern game you'll end up with
20 or 30
odd, contested kick. So that wasn't an element of the game in this one. I think but you did see, as I say, you did get those kicks into the corners. Now, that's very good kicking from the people, but also you do wonder, were the players not covering the backfield as well back in those days? Did they spend more time practicing other things than that? I'm not so sure, but some very good tactical kicking, and that was probably around about the time where Sale decided, you know what, we're just going to try and stop them getting the bonus point rather because we're not going to close this gap to win the game now, and it became a game of Munster going, look, we've won the game, now we don't want to try and lose them and let them back into it because we know they can be dangerous, and Sale going, well, look, you're just going to have to go the full length of the pitch to score that one. And it did break down to a bit of a stalemate with both sides for a while. And again, it comes to injury time, and it comes something that wasn't called out during commentary, but I watched this several times. And there's a knock on by Munster in the Sale half. So Sale get the scrum. The ball, it's a good Munster scrum, but it's not a totally dominant one, so it's slightly disrupted for Sale. Chabelle picks the ball up at the back of the scrum, and then just stands there, doesn't go anywhere, and you're like, what
are you doing?
What are you doing? You're not offloading it to the scrum half. You're not trying to run it in any particular direction. You just look shell. It looked like he thought the whistle had been blown, and he was waiting for the referee to make the call. But there's no call. He gets wrapped up. The ball doesn't come out. It's a maul, and hence and so it's a scrum to Munster. And that one moment is the moment that losers Sale the bonus point, or gives Munster the bonus point, because, and I was just like, what was he doing? I mean, yes, a lot of people are saying how in that drive back, Chabelle, in that first half, he wasn't the player he was. No, I agree. He wasn't at his destructive best by any stretch in his imagination. There's one, but he was still trying the whole game through. We had that chip and collect. It wasn't like he was looking shell shocked through the game, but for this moment, he definitely did. Either shell shocked.
I even just looked at it there, and you're dead on. He just picks the ball up. It's like if you're playing a PlayStation game and you're directing somebody, you just take your thumbs off, and you just let them stand there. And it's just, I don't know whether he thought something was going to happen or not, but he just stands there and he gets taken down by Stringer, for God's sake. Now maybe it was just a case like at that stage, like Chabelle, was just his confidence. Maybe it looked like he was trying to even maybe set up for a maul. I really don't know what their plan was for it, but like he got wrapped up by Stringer, then brought to the ground, and like you said there, from that results in try or line or scrum, Munster again, like this is what I said as well. The difference between this team and previous sides, like it was the backs. Like when John Kelly Payne got the ball, he got it on the 22. By the time he was on the ground, it was at the 5. And my God, Sale's pillar defense was terrible because there was no pillars.
What you had, what happened was, so we've come from a scrum. And remember, we are in the 81st minute of the game here, or the 82nd minute of the game. So all the players are tired. We come from a scrum. It goes all the way out on the right-hand side of the pitch, or the near touch line if you're watching the game on TV. There's quick hands to the far side of the pitch. And as you say, they go from the 22 up to the 5 metre line. All of the Sale defenders who are rushing across all wrap round to the blind side and totally ignore the pillar or the post or whatever you want to call it on the open side. And you've got something like 4 or 5 defenders on that blind side, and it's not that big a blind side.
It's not.
It's about from memory, maybe at most a 10 metre, probably about a 7 metre blind side, and there's 4 or 5 players stood in that gap. There is no way Munster are going down the blind side because they will get stopped. But unfortunately, they leave a gaping hole. Unfortunately for Sale, a gaping hole on the open side. One of the backs picks it up and just does a pick and go and just runs straight over, pretty much untouched.
And the last person you want over that ball to be kind of going over from that position is definitely it was like David Wallace got the winning try, but like as a number 7, he was one of those where it took 2 or 3 people just to, like he nearly needed a bloody elephant rifle to take him down. He was that kind of a powerful back row. But like for him to get the ball and like for no one to be there, like you couldn't have asked for a worse person to be going against you. So like get that try, and at that stage it was just a case of all right, game's over, because that was the one again. Like there's a reason that they do compare this to the Gloucester game as the miracle match from before, like because Munster did everything was kind of, it was almost a copycat of it. Whether it's and even just here that try, it transformed both team seasons as well, because like from their focus from this was basically on the Premiership, because they had to go up against Biarritz away in Spain. And for Munster, like they went from playing Toulouse away to having Perpignan visit them in Ireland. It was in Lansdowne they played that game as well. So like this was a season definer for both sides.
And yeah, it came down to those basically those 2 moments for that try. Chabelle, standing still, setting up a maul in when all his forwards are in front of him was if that's what he was trying to do, wow. And then basically over enthusiastic players by the defence. Wrapping round, and that last person just not stopping and thinking. And you've got to say, it probably was to do with fatigue on that 80. Looking at the time, but and also you got to remember, your post defence is normally your tight 5, and your tight 5 are wrapped up in a scrum on the far side of the pitch. They haven't got there to as you say, it's the 7. It's the open side flanker who's there. Nobody else from the pack really has got there. They're all still trundling across the pitch, hence there's no pillar, and it's just a perfect storm for him to go over, and he won't have an easier try.
No, he didn't.
to be fair to him, look, the work he's put in to get there from the scrum is a massive amount of work, and again, it's about that work off the ball that Munster were putting in this game. I think that really was the difference between these two sides. Being in front of your home fans, wanting it, knowing you've done it before against Gloucester with the same referee. Maybe that's what it all came down to. The French referee is their lucky charm, and they need to get him back again. He should have a free ticket to every single Munster game. An amazing game of rugby. As you say, you come out the first half breathless, thinking, "Wow, what am I going to get in the second half?" For someone who can't remember the game, and then you go, "Wow, okay, it's a very tense and tough second half." Don't get me wrong, but it's not the exciting first the excitement that you get in the first half of that game. But definitely a cracker to watch. And you mentioned that Munster are actually re-showing this game tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Irish time.
Yeah, I had to laugh when I saw it. I was just like, really? Of all the games you picked that one. I was just like, I wonder. Like, I'm just there going, okay, there must be. I'm not the only one who loves to kind of even when you said to pick one game, and I don't know why like this one came to mind, and even when I said it to you, you were just like, really? But again, even the fact that Munster showing it, that just shows you kind of how much weight that there is behind it. Also, I think it's one of the few that's available on YouTube as well in full.
Well, there is that. Yes, it is. So.
Yeah.
So if you're in Ireland, or actually no, if you're anywhere globally, just have to figure out what 7:30 is your time in 7:30 p.m. Ireland time is for you. And you've watched this, you've heard it all. You think, oh, I want to watch it. Well, I'll put a link in the notes below. Sorry, I forgot to do that to the actual game. But B, if you want to watch it, they're doing a premiere or a screening at 7:30, so you can watch it along with other fans. As well, and you can call out all the red cards and yellow cards that should have been given
in the first 5 minutes alone.
In the live chat, I'm sure it'll be a cracker to watch. I enjoyed watching it, and I know you enjoyed watching it. But as you say, that it was a season defining thing because of how the draw then went for the knockouts, and this was the first year that Munster ever won the Heineken Cup. I was going to say the European Champions Cup. Jeez, and that became a defining thing for the province because they went on to win 2 more. They
won this, and then it was 06 and 08 that they won it. And kind of since then, the closest is a few semi-finals, and that's it. It's kind of ironically enough, in 09 we got beaten by Leinster, and things were never the same after that. In much the same way when we bet Leinster in the semi-finals that year, like we really did a number on them. That really motivated them and resulted in them doing a number on us, and basically, superseding or surpassing everything that we've done in Europe since. Just kind of we were the big motivation for them, whereas before it used to be that they were the big motivation for us. But this game, it's like this, like even looking back on it, like it brought back a lot of nice memories and really fun memories, because even the winger Ian Dowling, who scored one of the tries, he was a club mate who used to train he used to train us once or twice when I was underage. He'd come along to a couple of the club training sessions and just give us some advice there. So it was nice to have that kind of a link to the squad, and just again reaching that. When you mentioned about previous Munster teams, like for 6-7 years they've been trying to knock on the door, and this was the year they finally did it. And this Sale game was kind of this, and the Castor game, they needed to get points from them. They got full points from both of them, and kind of it was the springboard for the success that they had after that. Yeah, and they went on to win it, even though, as I say, you were mentioning that a lot of people thought the previous year was their final chance. Well, I mentioned that the forwards of Pack were kind of described as old warriors. And yet they go on to win it again in 2 years' time. So a lot of people were thinking this was they'd seen the best of this side, and yet the best was just coming, which again is another great story from this game. Is that this was where it all kind of kicked. You say Cast was where it already kind of kicked off, but this was one of those defining moments of the province. And let's be honest, the Irish provinces really do cherish the Heineken Cup. It is what their season is kind of mainly about for both Munster and Leinster, especially. This is one of those key games within that history.
which was fantastic to watch. Any final points? I think we've probably wrapped it all up there.
Yeah, I think mostly. I suppose one of the other points was, God, I was just looking at this going, why can't between the fight and between kind of even like the scrums and everything else, I was just going, okay, why can't rugby be like this again? I'm not just saying, and I'm not just saying that for the nostalgic reasons, but like, yeah, just that first half, it's nearly worth just watching the first half alone, and then if you're in a bit of a rush, kind of skip through to the 74th minute, and then you can kind of see, because not much happens in the rest of the second half, but it was just like it was great just to watch it again, and like even it's weird even how much the game has changed in around 14 or so years, in terms of the rules, the style of play as well, and that. But yeah, no, it was just, even thanks for even asking me to even just go back in time, because I hadn't watched this game. I hadn't watched this game in full since 2006 as well, so a lot of great memories from it.
Yeah, and another one is also, if you the breakdowns, yeah, they're a mess. Okay,
complete mess.
They're complete mess, but you're not seeing missile bodies flying in, and so it looks a mess, but it doesn't look like a dangerous mess like it does nowadays. Which is, it just looks more like a rolling, and you like how the ball came out of there. I've got no idea, and there's not all these players bent over trying to jackal either, in the same kind of style or way. The breakdown is much better. The fighting, it's fun, but I do understand why they got rid of it. But I do prefer the breakdown and the scrums, because they take less time from this era, definitely. So. Thank you very much. Thank you for suggesting this game. It's been an absolute pleasure doing this. Also, you should check out Dan's radio show as well. I was on there 2 weeks ago now, talking about rugby. I'll put a link to the podcast down below in the notes as well. I should have done prior to the show. Sorry about that, folks. I'll put it in there. So check out that as well, because Dan has a weekly sports show, radio show over in Ireland. And actually, how can people get in touch? What's your Twitter account?
So if you check my Twitter handle is at Danny Ed O'Brien, so it's DANNYEDOBRIEN. And yeah, if you want to just check that out, they'll give you all the latest kind of. I do marketing as well, so it's a mixture of sports and marketing. And the show as well, it's What's the Score. So yeah, we'll put the link on at the end. Yeah, on the notes at the end of this as well. So
thank you very much for your time, and. For those of you who are watching live, 8 p.m. tonight over on Facebook on New Zealand Radio Sport, I'm doing my first ever sports quiz. So do check that out. So I've got 2 teams of 2 people. We'll be finding it out on Do You Know Sport.